Crisis is brewing yet again in Edo State, perhaps because of the forthcoming elections. That may be a big signal, isn't it? The Edo governor, Mr. Godwin Obasaki, says he's not happy that the Edo Specialist Hospital, which costs so much of taxpayers' money, cannot be put to good use in fighting coronavirus pandemic currently ravaging the world. Mr. Obasaki was speaking after receiving a report on the hospital by the Judicial Commission of Inquiry set up in January to investigate all the contracts involved in the construction of the facility and the medical supplies. He insisted that the inquiry had been set up before the advent of COVID-19 and is not punitive, noting that anyone found culpable by the probe, irrespective of position, will face the law. Take a listen to Governor Obasaki.
When we instituted this panel to investigate and find out why the hospital, the specialist hospital, which was built with so much of taxpayers' monies, could not be put into full operation. We did not know at that time that the world would be faced with a public health pandemic, COVID-19, as we have today. And this rather unfortunate pandemic has put to our healthcare system to test. Some people who had the opportunity to commence the process of rebuilding some of these institutions, rather than took measures and steps to further destroy an already weak system. If we find anybody or any groups of persons, no matter how highly placed, to have been indicted or have cause to be called to account for their actions, this government will stop at no, it will not stop until it gets to the bottom of the matter. We will not stop until everybody who has something to explain or has resources of government to refund, because this hospital or these projects were built or done with taxpayers' funds. As the government, we will make sure that anybody who has questions to answer will be called upon to answer, no matter how highly placed. And if there are resources of government that need to be returned to government, we will not stop at any length to make sure that those resources are returned to government.
Well, the former governor, Oshiomhole, whose administration handled the project, told me in an interview last year about this project some of his thoughts on the issues raised on the reason why the hospital did not function 3 years or more after it was launched by President Muhammadu Buhari. This is the side of the story of Mr. Oshiomhole.
Built what I call a 5-star hospital. And I deliberately for health. And we got a professor of medicine, University of Benin, a lady, Mrs. Edigie, to superintend over the procurement process and ensuring that we bring state-of-the-art equipment to that hospital. We built the hospital with the taxpayers' money, and consistent with my policy, we gave the contract to Vamed Nigeria Limited. Vamed is very well known international hospital equipment manufacturers. They operate not only in Nigeria, they operate in many African countries. They are known to have the largest hospital in Austria. And for me, we will not give Edo anything less than the best. And we placed order for them to supply this equipment, which they did. And with time, they procured the equipment. And the hospital has been furnished. I paid 75% of the total value before I left government. All I expected my successor to do was to pay the balance. Yes, prices have changed. All of this can be negotiated. And this hospital was locked. I take a newspaper every day. I see my political opponent arguing that there is nothing in the hospital. And this is a hospital that President Muhammadu Buhari came to commission about 1 week before the end of my tenure. And from the equipment that were already delivered, he was so impressed. He was very impressed. And I told her the choice I had to make was between building what you might call ultra-modern state house, or rather building ultra-modern, go floor by floor, see the kind of equipment that are there, get those who know what those equipment are meant for to explain to you the use of those equipment. You will be impressed about what we did. And this hospital was closed for 2 years. I keep speaking to the governor. The only way, because as the European will say, or the British, the sweetness of the pudding is in the eating. If it's convenient for PDP to be writing that there is nothing in the hospital, the best way to answer them is to open the hospital for business. When the governor refused to open the hospital, after I have complained to Dangote, who is our mutual friend, I asked the company to do a documentation on each of the equipment that are in the hospital. And I placed it on various networks, including channels, about 25 minutes documentary. When people saw that, the public opinion changed. And the governor came under pressure. Why will you lock this hospital with this kind of facilities? Now, rather than opening this hospital up in obedience to the public outcry, they decided to set up an inquiry. And I'm going to give you a copy of the findings of the inquiry. Now, who set up this inquiry? This inquiry was set up by a speaker who has grievances arising from the fact that he lost nomination to a sitting member of the House of Representatives, Honorable Peter Akpatasi, who, thanks to God, is today the deputy leader of the House. And so, based on his own bitterness, he was encouraged by government to set up a panel to investigate the construction as well as the procurement process. And they removed all the documents from the Ministry of Health to give the impression as if the construction was a verbal transaction.
Well, you heard him there. So let's talk about this, everyone. It's causing a lot of trouble. There are protests on the streets of Edo by concerned individuals about the probe on these hospital projects. I have joining me tonight the panel to discuss is a former commissioner in the Oshiomhole administration who was in charge of information, Mr. Kasim Afegbua. He joins us from our Abuja studio. And to speak for the Obasaki government is Mr. Mwante Adaze. He's an advisor to Governor Obasaki. He joins us via Skype. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on tonight. Let me begin by asking you, Mr. Adaze, the government of the Obasaki-led administration has set up this committee and they have come out with a white paper saying that the administration of the Oshiomhole administration is indicted in this. In just about a few seconds, what exactly are these indictments?
Basically, it was a commission of inquiry set up to look at those allegations that were made by the opposition, particularly the PDP. You know, we had a series of protests. And of course, the commission came up with an 8-point recommendation, one of which was that the process itself was flawed by all forms of, fraud, because the law is very clear. Section 47 of the procurement law requires 25% payment of mobilization, but Oshiomhole had to pay 75%. Unfortunately, that money was paid, yet the equipment were not delivered. Unfortunately, when Mr. President came to commission that hospital towards the end of Oshiomhole's government, what they did was they went to Lagos, they hired some hospital equipment, put them there, deceived Mr. President. After the president left, still within Oshiomole's government, that hospital was under lock and key. So when I hear the former governor talk about the place was locked, he locked that hospital. When the governor came, the hospital was open, and we discovered that there were no equipment, because when they hired this equipment from Lagos, before Oshiomhole left government, they returned this equipment. And there's no way the governor can conceal such a public trust, because health is at the core of every government policy. So this idea of concealment was not part and parcel of the social contract Godwin Obasaki has with the old people. So that there's an inquiry now that has brought out to the fore the facts as they are. So you have a case of...
Let's get it clear, Mr. Emonse Adaze. Fundamentally, just apologies, we need to be succinct and straight to the point, because we have some of these allegations, and I like the two sides on the divide tonight to be able to give Nigerians clarity and explanation of some sort on what is happening exactly. So fundamentally, what you're saying is that the paper or the inquiry indicted the Oshiomhole administration for giving a mobilization of 75% as against 25%. That's the position, isn't it?
That is one. And the fact that at the time the president was invited to come and commission, the hospital was not complete. Do you commission what is not complete without an equipment? Without equipment in the hospital, what makes a hospital?
So you also said, sorry, so that before, please, apologies, so that Mr. Afegbua can react. I just wanted to make it clear so that he will know what exactly to react to. So you are saying that hospital, when it was opened by the Obasaki government, it was empty, no equipment in there.
Completely empty. We had some hospital beds, but the main equipment, because it's a specialist hospital, the main equipment were yet to be delivered. And even they admitted that they had issues with Forex, but we are talking of a contract, a situation where you find a governor holding brief for a contractor, trying to explain that there was drop in dollar. And unfortunately, until 2018, none of these equipment were delivered. And even as we speak, most of these equipment have not been delivered.
All right, so you said, just a moment again, Mr. Adaze, so don't let us muddle the issues. So you said they borrowed equipment. Do you know where these equipments were borrowed from?
Of course, from Lagos. There's a company, I don't want to mention the name of the company, some were even acquired from Stella Obasanjo Hospital. So you find that the hospital was not ready at the time Mr. President commissioned this hospital. So it was a clear case of fraud, advance fee fraud. 75% was paid. These equipment were not delivered, but they went to hire equipment from Lagos.
Mr. Adaze, let's allow Mr. Afegbua to come into the conversation. So, Mr. Afegbua, please react to what Mr. Adaze said about this indictment.
Well, you see, I've just been listening to him and laughing out my heart. Not for any reason, but for the fact that Adaze was an outsider in government. He didn't know what transpired. He's just been sent an errand to come and defend the government. But again, as a lawyer, I expect him to speak to facts of the matter. And what are these facts? You were talking about hospital that was commissioned and it was put under lock and key. When you opened it, you found it empty. Then you now locked it. Yet, the same government on September 18, 2018, wrote a letter of commendation to VAMED for having fulfilled the terms of the contract of supply of equipment to that hospital and praying that they should please help to train some of the personnel that will handle this sophisticated equipment. But to look at an Adaze telling us that as of 2018 nothing was done, I find it very, very curious and very laughable. The point is, the central hospital, when we were approving that contract in 2016 as a government, as an ESCO, Governor Godwin Obasaki was then our colleague. He was part and parcel of ESCO. He also was one of those who gave advice that it would be better for us to have a 75% advance payment so that we can, beat we can beat the fluctuations that was evidently going to happen as a result of our Naira devaluation. We gave that contract, that at that period, dollar was 198. Barely 5 months after then, dollar rose to 360, and in some cases 400 naira to $1. So to that extent, the company were not able to, get the required foreign exchange to carry out this contract. But as at the time they now carried out the contract, by September 18, 2018, they delivered up to 75% as agreed in the terms of the contract. And the Obasaki administration wrote a letter of commendation to VAMED, saying that you have done your bit. Now, for the Obasaki administration to pay the remaining 25% so that the company can conclude on the equipment that are left, it has refused to do so. So I just see this as a sheer political witch hunt by somebody who served in the same government with us, who was our colleague, who also voted in the ESCO, who was part and parcel of the ESCO, who knew everything. When Buhari was commissioned, he was standing at the back of Comrade Oshiomhole at that commission, if you watch the video. And so for him to come and say that the commission an empty hospital is not only laughable, ridiculous, but I think it's very outlandish.
Okay, we take a break now. But when we come back, we'll talk more about some of the items on the inquiry report and the issues on the allegations of procurement breach in Edo State. Join us again, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. We're talking about the allegation of fraud over the Edo Specialist Hospital in Benin City. My partner tonight, Mr. Kasim Afegbua, a former commissioner in Edo State under the Oshiomhole administration, and Mr. Adaze Emwanta is an advisor to Governor Obasaki. We'll trying to get some clarity. Before I come back to you, Mr. Emwanta, Mr. Afegbua, react to what the allegation of that committee as also reiterated by Mr. Emwanta, saying that the administration of the Oshiomhole exceeded the 25% mobilization fees for contractors as captured in the procurement law in Edo State, the section 47 of the procurement law in Edo State.
Well, thank you very much, Sheung. You see, the ESCO took a decision as a body, following advices from people like Godwin Obasaki and the Tenders Board, presided, chairman by one of Obasaki's managing director of the Edo Geographical Information System, Information System, GIS, presently Frank Ewawan, that in view of the fact that these items are state-of-the-art items, equipment, that it would be advisable for us to pay 75% upfront so that the company will not default in terms of manufacturing this equipment. These are not items you can buy across the counter. These are items that have to be manufactured to suit specification under the supervision of the Commissioner for Health, who is a professor of medicine from the University of Benin. That is one. Secondly, the Section 47 he quoted also has a proviso, because in Edo State's procurement law also provides that in the event that you are going to pay more than 20% or 25%, there has to be a written request from the company, number one, and there has to be a bank guarantee and or insurance bond to ensure that when you pay such amount of money, the contractor will not run away from site. That is provided in the law. So what we did as an ESCO, as a body, for which Governor Obasaki was part and parcel, was not out of place. But for you to now set up a commission of inquiry, indicting us, means that Obasaki is also indicted. So if he wants to try us, he should also remove his immunity and join us in the dock so that we can be tried together for indictment. That is another. Thirdly, you see, it is not good for you to play politics with issues that are so obvious. The Edo Central Hospital, they are the one calling him specialist hospital. If you say it was under lock and key and you refuse to use it, how come you appointed a consultant from Delta State who is presently running the place, but because the equipment are so sophisticated, rather than give personnel that will be trained by this company, they refuse because they just want to carry out sheer blackmail. So in essence, That hospital is 75% ready in terms of equipment, 100% ready in terms of the structure, and ready to move to business. But the Obasaki administration, for act of wickedness and sheer brigandage, decided to just keep it under lock and key and put a consultant there who is just pretending.
So let's allow Mr. Adaze to respond to you, Mr. Afegbua.
Only 3 days ago, listen.
Hold on, Mr. Afegbua, because we need to balance the timing issue also. Mr. Adaze, react to what Mr. Afegbua said on the issue, and also Mr. Oshiomhole, in that interview we played earlier, also queried the reason why the hospital has been under lock and key. Your reaction?
It's quite unfortunate because when you talk of a hospital, you don't talk of 75%. If you were paid 75%, it means that your equipment that has been paid for against the procurement law, which was 75% that they received, was ought to be 100% delivered. You don't talk of, because you're talking of lives here. And what is even more important is the fact that this equipment, Kasim has considered that it is 75% of what was supposed to be 100% equipment that was delivered. Unfortunately, they talk of ESCO. The buck stops at the table of the governor. Oshiomhole was the governor at the material time. Obasaki was a member of ESCO in an advisory capacity. If as governor of the state, the government was indicted, the buck stops at his table. It was Harry Truman, the former American president, that says the buck stops here. And that Oshiomhole was the person who gave that contract to a middle woman. Her name is Golda. Edo people, it's adult public affairs, that woman fixed that money, all this talk of foreign exchange and the rest, all those are cock and bull story. The inquiry has brought out the truth. The procurement law was breached, this contract was not completed, and people will be made to refund the monies that they collected. If Mr. President was invited to commission the project, as Kasim has said, that was not complete, why commission a project that is not up to 75% complete? Even the time they are now talking of 75% is 2018. At the time the hospital was commissioned, there was no equipment. They had equipment. There's no way the governor can be part of a fraud.
You've not, what I said, what I was asking earlier, part of the reaction I was asking is why hospital was under lock and key for over 2 years. Would you react to that?
It was Oshiomhole that locked that equipment, locked the hospital because the equipment were not supplied. Kasim said that the equipment were brought in 2018 for an hospital that was commissioned in 2016, and it was even 75% of those equipment. When 75%
but was there a written recommendation letter? Was there, as alleged by Mr. Afegbua, was there a written recommendation letter to VAME, the company involved, by the Obasaki government?
That claim is wishful thinking, because Kasim is just talking as one of those persons that, of course, he belongs to the same ethnic group with Oshiomhole, and he would defend him even as a PDP member. But I am speaking from a standpoint of fact. If a hospital that was commissioned in 2016, you are now talking of 2018, you are bringing 75% of the equipment, it therefore means there was a fraud. And that is what this inquiry has,
So quickly also, went to talk to so quickly, Mr. Adaze, also react to the fact that Mr. Afegbua is claiming that if there is any indictment, that the governor should also be joined in that indictment.
It does not even make any sense, because the approval for payment was made by Adams Aliyu Oshiomhole as governor of Edo State. If there's any charge from the recommendations, it is a man who gave that approval. And there was no way ESCO would approve something that was against the law. A permanent secretary from the findings of the commission actually recommended that the law says 25%. And Oshiomhole, using his fiat, approved the payment of 75% to his girlfriend, Golda. And that lady fixed the money. That money was placed under fixed deposit for years. And of course, this inquiry has brought out the facts. What are they afraid of? If Oshiomhole is saying that is innocent, he should come to equity with clean hands.
All right, let's hear from Mr. Afegbua on some of the issues that you have raised. Mr. Afegbua, your time to react to some of the things that you said.
So, I think I can tolerate the naivety of Ewanta, but I can't excuse his ignorance, very crass ignorance about the operations of government. A governor of a state has no power to approve any contract that is more than 100 million. No government in Edo State, no governor in Edo State has the power. When a contract that exceeds 100 million gets to the ESCO, memos are prepared and they are served to all commissioners. They study them and they make their inputs. When it is time for discussion, the inputs are presented. And once there is a vote and approval, it goes to the cabinet office of the ESCO. It is not the governor's table. This is where the ignorance comes in. Then from there, a memo, an extract of that ESCO will be given as a condition precedent to the award of such contract. A governor has no power to approve contract exceeding 100 million. That's an ignorance on the part of a one-task. Secondly, you see, when you mention people's name, you have to be careful because some of these things could be very libelous, in a way. You are mentioning a lady's name, Golda. The company that we gave contract to is VAMED. And the Edo State government under Godwin Obasaki issued a letter of commendation to VAMED, certifying the equipment they have supplied to meet the 75% paid for that job. It is the responsibility of the state government under Obasaki to pay the remaining 25% and supply the other equipment. And he's talking about 100%. I think he's having problem with understanding the tenor of my presentation.
So, Mr. Afegbua, I mean, would you also react to... So, Mr. Afegbua, would you also react to the fact that at the end of the day, it comes to the fact that the buck stops at the table of the governor?
No, which buck? I've just told you the scenario and the situation and the operative, situation in award of contract. A governor has no power in Edo State, I don't know of any other state, to award contract beyond 100 million. But once it is beyond 100 million, if it becomes an ESCO decision, that is the ESCO position, they're taking, having collected inputs from all members of the ESCO. And once that decision has been taken, that document, that extra, becomes the position of the state government. It is not Ali Oshiomhole as the client. It is Edo State government as the client, giving contract to VAMED as a company that supplies hospital equipment. That is the procedure.
Yeah.
And that procedure
we need to close the program now. Let's allow Mr. Mwanta a 20 seconds closing remark. Mr. Mwanta, your 20-second closing remark.
It's quite unfortunate that Kasim has come to national TV to give tales because governors have security votes. And of course, we know the figures over 100 million. So for security contracts, you can actually give as much as you can because health and security are connected. But of course, in the days ahead, the Edo State Ministry of Justice will start the process of prosecuting Oshiomhole for the crimes he has committed against Edo people and for the fraud he committed to Nigerians when he invited the president to commission an uncompleted project. He's not above the law.
I must sincerely thank both of you for coming tonight. Mr. Kasim Afegbua.
Also note that in this same event, you didn't invite Governor Oshiomhole to come and testify. You didn't invite him at all. You only set up your commission, you gave him a verdict, and you are shaving his head in his absence. No fair hearing, which is a requirement under our laws.
We need to leave it at that.
But you know, they were working from answer to question, and now we have seen their traces.
Mr. Kasim Afegbua, thank you so much. And Mr. Mwanta Adaze, thank you, gentlemen, for coming tonight. Well, that's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Kimbale. Bye for now.